Okay, let us now briefly discuss about inductors. So, what is an inductor? An inductor is a passive two-terminal electrical component that stores energy in its magnetic field when current flows through it. Right. So, two important points to note here is that inductor is a passive two-terminal component and it stores its energy in form of magnetic field when current flows through it. So, different types of inductors images are shown here as you can see. So, how can you make an inductor? It's quite simple. You take insulated metallic wire form and make a wound as in form of a spring, and that basically makes an inductor. And for particularly this inductor, you can see inside this core means inside this spring there is only air is there. So this type of inductors are called air core inductor. However, for this type of inductor as well as this type of inductor, you can see the air is not present here. Instead, for this inductor you can see an iron core, or for this inductor you can see here one ferrite core has been used to increase the inductance. And this type of inductors are called iron or ferrite core inductors depending upon the material that is. What about the circuit symbol of these inductors? Yes. For air core inductor, as you know, we represent air core inductor by this symbol. Whereas for iron core, we use this symbol. Whereas for ferrite core, we use this type of symbol. So I am writing here I to denote this is iron core, and writing here F to denote indicate it the ferrite core. Right. So every inductor is characterized by its inductance. Right, and which is represented by the symbol L. Now suppose this is one inductor, okay, whose inductance is L, and the voltage drop across this inductor is V, and the current that is flowing through this inductor is I of t. Let's say it is an varying current, right? So then what will be the relation between this current and voltage in case of inductor? So this V can be expressed by this expression, V equal to L into di dt, where this V is the voltage drop across this inductor, and if you represent this V in the unit of volt and this current I in ampere, then this L, the unit of L will be Henry, Henry, or in short it is also written as capital H, and this is the SI unit of inductance. So how can you define this inductance? So rather you can also write L equal to V by di of t dt. So basically it is the ratio of voltage across the inductor to the rate of change of current across rate of change of current through the inductor, right? That's how you can define inductor. Now let us discuss here the working principle of inductor using a simple circuit. So this is the inductor, which is connected with a battery, and parallel to this inductor one simple bulb is connected. This inductance is L, this open position is the switch. Fine. And this is the lamp. We need two of these images, one for when the switch is closed and one for when the switch is open. So let me copy and come back to this circuit after 2 minutes. But before that, let us first recap some of the things that you already know. So you can see two new images here. One is single conductor and the other one is an inductor, right? So when a current flows through a conductor, it generates a magnetic field around the conductor. In case of an inductor, the magnetic field lines converge at the center of this inductor. The total magnetic field become quite strong, right? And when current varies, the magnetic field changes. Also, from Faraday's law of induction, you know that change in flux or change in magnetic flux that produces an electromotive force or EMF, which is basically nothing but a voltage. And from Lenz's law, you also know that voltage that will be developed across this inductor that to oppose the current that has created the change in magnetic field. Okay, let us now come back to these circuit diagrams. So here you can see the switch is open now, right? So what is the current that is flowing through this? 0. Through this lamp? 0. So as the current flowing through this is 0, so there is no stored energy for this inductor, right? Now suppose we have closed this switch. Fine. So when the switch is closed, now the circuit is complete. So one current will definitely flow from this battery. So when the current will come here, it will see two paths. One is through this and the other one is through this lamp, right? Then what will happen? Now we have to think that this is not a resistor, this is an inductor, right? So initially, before closing the switch, the current through this inductor was 0. Now some finite amount of current will try to flow through this inductor, right? And obviously that will try to change the magnetic field created by this inductor. You know, change in magnetic field will also create an EMF, right? With a polarity like this. So this polarity will now try to oppose the current that is flowing through this. So as a result, initially most of the current will be taking this path through this lamp. So as a result, for a brief period of time, this lamp will glow, right? Okay, then what happens? Now as the time goes on, the magnetic field on this inductor will keep on increase, and finally this magnetic field gets saturated. Now when this magnetic field is saturated, then there is no EMF, right? And at that situation, this inductor, if it is a real inductor, if it is an ideal inductor, okay, then it offers a 0 resistance. So two parallel paths, one has a lower resistance. So then what will happen? Now then most of the current will be now flowing through this inductor, no current through this lamp. So after a brief period of time, what we will be seeing that the lamp will stop glowing. Now the next step, So suppose this was now closed, and now suppose we have opened it. So when we have opened the switch, then the current which was flowing from this battery to this inductor earlier, that will get interrupted, right? So as a result, the magnetic field developed across this inductor, that will start shrinking. So that change in magnetic field will again create another EMF, that is called an back EMF, with a polarity like this, so that the same current which was flowing earlier before just opening the switch can flow across this inductor, right? And this current, as this path is open, cannot flow through this, but it has a closed path through this bulb. So this current can flow through this lamp, and we will be able to see a flash on this light before it fades away altogether. However, please remember all these instances that we have discussed so far, okay, that will happen very quickly. Yeah, one more thing. Suppose through this inductor, when the switch is closed, okay, and among a current of magnitude I was flowing, okay, then what would be the stored energy? That is half Li square. So that will be the amount of energy that will store in an inductor when a current of magnitude I is flowing through it. Let us see the consequences of energy storage across inductor in a circuit, which is also known as inductor kickback. This we will illustrate using a simple example. Let us consider a DC circuit. This is a switch. This is the inductor, which is also connected with the 4-volt battery, say. And the value of inductance is 10 millihenry. Fine. So suppose now initially we close the switch. So what will happen? Obviously one current will flow when the switch is closed, and the 4-volt will be dropped across this inductor. So what will be the value of this current? From this expression of I equal to 1 by L integration 0 to t v dt, you can find it out. Just you have to put the substitute the values. Remember, V is constant here. And if we put all these values, it comes out to be 400 T amps. See this current, this is a huge current, right? And also, surprisingly, see this current is increasing linearly with time, right? It increases linearly. But is it possible that the current will keep on increasing with time? No, right? Because why we are getting that? Because we have considered the ideal inductor whose resistance is 0. But in practical inductor, the current will be limited by the value of resistance. Let us now consider, say after 1 millisecond, we have opened the switch, right? Then we should know that what was the current before opening the switch, so that you can easily find from the here, right? So time is 1 millisecond. You know I equal to 400 T, right? So if you can put the time here, you will get the current value as 0.4 amps. So 0.4 amps was the current which was flowing before the switch was opened. Now when you open the switch, inductor will try to oppose any change in current. So inductor will try to retain the same amount of current, like is 0.4 amps, right, which was flowing across the inductor. And for that, you know, one back EMF have to be generated, and the polarity of the back EMF will be like this plus, this minus. So what will be the value of this back EMF? That also we know, right? We can find it out. V equal to L di dt. So what is a di? It is after 0 minus 0.4. And what is I? What is this dt? So what is this? This is dt. So basically, what is this dt? This is the switching time. That means this much time is required to open the switch. Then from here, if we substitute it and do the little bit calculation, it comes out to be that this VL is 4000 volt, right, which is minus, right? It's a huge voltage, right? So if we now consider the case of this switch, which is an open now, right, that means there is some gap between these two connecting wires. I have just highlighted this region. So the total voltage will drop across between these two open wires, right? And what is the drop? Is a huge, right? It's around 4000, how much? 4004 volt, right? As a result, you can see one spark there, right, across this switch. So what is this spark is actually? The spark is actually the air breakdown. So you know air is basically an insulator, but when you apply very high voltage to a closely paced conductor, then air will also break down, and which results in a spark. So what can we do to solve this issue of spark? Okay, for that let us copy this image and show it in the next page. Paste. Let us delete the unwanted regions. Okay, this highlighted, but it seems that highlighted region is not going. Okay, let it be fine. Okay, so sometimes instead of this mechanical switch, you can also use some electronic switch, and this electronic switch means basically like type of transistors, right, which cannot withstand that high voltage. So due to this inductor kickback, if you use some electronic switch, those switch can get damaged, right? So what is the solution? How can you solve this issue? Because inductor you have to use it. So there is a very easy solution. The solution is we need to use one diode. Okay, and this diode is also referred as flyback diode. See this flyback diode, okay, when this 4 volt has been applied, so the polarity was like this. So the diode was in reverse bias, no current was flowing through this diode. But during this when the back EMF has produced, right, the polarity has get changed, and this basically the diode become forward bias, and it provides a path for the current to flow, right? Thus that way we can avoid the inductor kickback. So far we have considered a single inductor, but in practical circuit there might be multiple inductors. Sometimes inductors might be in series, sometimes in parallel. So if the inductors are in series, so what will be their equivalent? For example, let us say like there are inductors like L1, L2, L3 dot dot dot. Okay, they are in series. So what will be their equivalent inductance? That will be, you have to just simply add them. That is L is equal to L1 plus L2 plus L3. Whereas if the inductors are in parallel, suppose this induct first, this second, then this one, which is L1, L2, L3. There may be other inductors as well, dot dot dot. They are in parallel. Then their equivalent inductance. So for this case, L equivalent will be equal to 1 by 1 plus L1 plus 1 by L2 plus 1 by L3, same as that of resistance, right? Let us also quickly discuss the properties of inductors in AC circuits. So far, we have primarily concentrated on the DC circuits, right? So you already know that from previous discussion that inductor always tries to oppose the any change in current flowing through it, right? So suppose this is an inductor whose inductance is L, one terminal is grounded and one current I of t is flowing through this inductor. Okay. The other terminal of the inductor is connected with an AC source. Okay. Let's say this is V of t. Fine. So as this is AC source, so then I of t will also be varying, right? So as this I of t is changing, then this inductor will also try to oppose the flow of I of t through it. This particular property of inductor which opposes the flow of current from an AC source is called its reactance and denoted by the symbol XL, where this XL can be found out from omega L or 2 pi f into L. What is omega? Angular frequency. What is L? L is nothing but the inductance of this inductor and denoted in unit is Henry. What is pi? 3.14. What is f? Linear frequency. Unit Hertz. L Henry, right? And the unit of XL in that case would be in ohm. Let us say this AC source V of t can be expressed as Vm sine of omega t on sinusoidal signal, right, which has created this current I of t which is flowing through this inductor. Then how can you find this current I of t? We know the relation between V and I across an inductor, which is nothing but V equal to L into di of t dt. So from here we can find the value of or expression of di of t. Which will come like 1 by L integration of V dt, right? If we simplify the expression little bit more, then I of t can be written as Vm by omega L into minus cos of omega t, which can also be written as Vm by omega L into sine of omega t minus 90 degree, isn't it? Because these two are same. Here is the interesting thing. You see here, this V of t is nothing but sine of omega t. But I of t, let me write I of t here as well. So I of t is sine of omega t minus 90 degrees. So basically it lags. I of t lags. So basically what we can write then? For inductor, voltage leads the current by 90 degree, isn't it? Let me illustrate this using voltage and current waveforms. So this figure shows the waveform of both voltage and current across the inductor, right? Where the y-axis denotes the amplitude and the x-axis denotes the time. Okay, and this is the waveform of this voltage starting from time t equal to 0, right? And it is basically the waveform of a sinusoidal. So basically you can see this V of t is Vm sine of omega t, so it is expected to be of this shape. However, for I of t, by the way, what is V of m? V of m is nothing but the amplitude of the voltage waveform, right? Now, if you consider the case of I of t, then you can see I of t is sine of omega t minus 90 degree. That means compared to the voltage waveform, the I of t waveform will start after a phase shift of 90 degree or a pi by 2 as shown in this image, right? Isn't it? However, in this image, we should actually show this part as well, because for both waveform, they should start from t equal to 0, right? And the amplitude of this current waveform is this one, which is given by nothing but Vm by omega L, isn't it? Then what is the phase difference between this voltage and current waveform? Exactly, it is 90 degree or pi by 2. And from this waveform, it is also clear that the voltage leads the current. Now, the same thing can also be represented in terms of phasor diagram, right? So, if we represent I here like this, then V will be, we have to show it like this, and the phase difference between this V and I should be 90 degree, and V should lead the current. So, before we finish our discussion on inductors, let us take a quick note. This inductor L behaves as a short circuit when frequency or F is 0. That means in case of DC, an inductor will behave as a short circuit, whereas the same inductor will behave as an open circuit when the frequency is very high, right? So that is important, please remember that. And this is also clear from the expression of XL, which indicates that XL is proportional to frequency. Let us now discuss about diodes. So from the name itself, it is clear that the diodes have two electrodes, isn't it? Diodes, right? So what is a diode? So a diode is a two-terminal device or component which conducts current in one direction, right, and does not conduct or block the current when the voltage applied across the diode is reversed, isn't it? So diode is a two-terminal device which conducts current in one direction and does not conduct when the voltage across the diode is reversed, right? Diodes can be of different types. Some of the types are listed here, and also in these images you can also see some of the diodes, right? Okay, basically all of them are actually diodes. Some of them are used for display purpose, some are for other electrical purpose. So these are basically general purpose diode. This is the Zener diode, this is the light emitting diodes, right, which emits actually light for different display purpose. It has been used. The photodiodes, it's not shown here, but what is a photodiode? When light falls on this diode, this conductivity gets changes. So this is basically the photodiode. What about the circuit symbol of these diodes? So for general purpose diode, in circuit, they generally represent it like this. Zener diodes, whereas even though it is a PN junction diode, all of them are actually PN junction diode. It represents we represent Zener diode in this way. And in case of light emitting diodes, so it should emit light, right? And generally this symbol is used to indicate the emission of light from this diode. And in photodiodes, its conductivity changes when light falls on it, so the light has to fall on it. So its symbol is like this, circuit symbol. And if we have to show the diode symbol beside this general purpose diode, then we must show it like this, where this terminal is the cathode terminal and this terminal is the anode terminal. Okay, so anode you know plus, cathode is minus, and this cathode terminal in a diode is represented by this line or strip, okay, that is generally marked in each diode. So if we apply a positive voltage here and negative voltage here, then the diode is forward biased and current will flow through it. That means the diode conducts. From the definition also we have seen that. However, if we just reverse the polarity, if we apply plus here and negative voltage here, so the diode is in reverse bias and it does not conduct, means it blocks that current, right? And all these diodes that is shown here, they are actually made up of semiconductors, so they are basically the semiconductor diodes, isn't it? However, before the invention of the semiconductor, people used to use these vacuum tubes for different electronic purpose. Okay, and this is one of the example of this vacuum tube diode. So from the name itself, you should understand that this is a vacuum tube. That means the conduction of electron will happen through vacuum. And in vacuum tubes, similarly we should have an anode. We also should have an cathode, and in addition to that there is an resistive element, that is the heater. And the whole assembly is sealed inside a glass tube under vacuum. So inside it is vacuum. Okay. This resistive element, when current flow through this, it gets heated, right? And when it gets heated, this cathode, this emits electron, and if we apply a positive voltage here, then that attracts electron, and electron can flow from this cathode to anode. So that's how the current can conduct. But if you reverse the polarity, right, in anode if you apply negative and in cathode you apply positive, then the current cannot flow. That means it blocks the flow of current. We will discuss more about these diodes in our later classes. Okay. So let us now discuss about transistors. So what is a transistor? So first of all, what we can say, the transistor is a semiconductor device, right? Let us write it. So that can amplify a signal. This transistor can amplify a signal, right? Along with that, transistor can also act as a switch. And a transistor should have at least 3 terminals. Enough to describe a transistor, right? So in this image, you can see different type of discrete transistors. They having different shapes, different packaging types, right? So for example, if you see particularly for this transistor, so this transistor is packaged with a plastic material, whereas for this transistor you can see the metal packaging, right? And for this as well. So the why there are different shapes and different type of packaging? For plastic packaging is primarily used from the point of view of cost, because it is quite low cost plastic packaging, whereas metal packaging is generally used to consider the dissipation of heat. Okay, for different transistors, if they are particularly the power transistor, you will also see a dedicated heat sink attached with these transistors. These heat sinks helps to dissipate the heat produced in the transistor when the transistor is on. Also, we have mentioned the transistor should have at least 3 terminals, but in many transistors for this as well as for this, you can see there are only 2 terminals are shown. So, for this type of transistor, the third terminal is the package or the metal package body terminal will act as a third terminal for this type of transistors. Fine. Transistors can be broadly classified into 2 types. The first one is field effect transistor, or in short it is FET, field effect transistor. The second type is bipolar junction transistor, or in short BJT, bipolar junction transistors, right? So examples of this different type of FETs are MOSFETs, which stands for metal oxide semiconductor field effect transistors, JFET, junction field effect transistor, or HEMT, high electron mobility transistor. These are the examples of this field effect transistor. One unique property of these field effect transistors or FETs are they are unipolar devices, whereas from the name itself you can understand that these BJTs are bipolar devices. So what do you mean by unipolar devices? Unipolar devices means for these devices either electrons or holes will participate in conduction. You know electron and holes, like they are the charge carriers of semiconductor. Whereas for BJTs or bipolar junction transistor, as they are bipolar devices, both electrons and holes participate in conduction. Participate in conduction, isn't it? Right. And as we have mentioned earlier, that the transistor should have at least 3 terminals, right? So for these field effect transistors, these terminals are termed as source, in short S, drain, in short D, and gate, in short G, right? So these are the terminals for field effect transistors or FETs. However, for BJTs or bipolar junction transistors, the terminals are termed as emitter, in short E, base, in short B, and collector, in short C. So let me write E, B, and C here. So this is a basic discussion on transistors. More details of these transistors, primarily on these field effect transistors and this bipolar junction transistor, will be discussed in next consecutive classes. So here, so far we have discussed all about different components, and all the components that we have discussed so far are discrete components, right? Discrete component means we have individually considered resistor, inductor, capacitor, diode, transistor, right? So you can see here different discrete components of electronics, right? You can identify, we have discussed just now. And you can use these discrete components to make the circuits. So for example, this is one breadboard, that you can see it here, right? And this is one, you can identify the different components. This is resistor, this is transistor, right? This may be some capacitors, right? And then finally you have some connecting wires. So you can make a circuit like this, right? In fact, in your laboratory courses, you will be making circuits on breadboard like this. So all these circuits, if you use this discrete components and make circuit like this, they are called circuits with discrete components. So in this discrete component, as we have already discussed, if this is a resistor, so this resistor is made up with some carbon film, right? Transistor, this is a transistor, this is made up with silicon, right? If this is a capacitor, then this is made up with two parallel plates, and in between some either ceramic or some oxide, right? What we have discussed, isn't it? But if you consider the case of integrated circuit, then in integrated circuit, both active and passive components are made up with silicon. So that is the basic difference. So that means you don't use resistor of this you don't make resistor using the carbon film. You make resistor using silicon only. So you can just, I am reading from here. You see, this integrated circuit is a set of electronic circuit on a small piece of semiconducting material, primarily silicon. So integration of large number of electronic components, both active and passive, on a single chip results in a reduction in size, cost and power consumption. At the same time, it will also increase the operational speed and reliability, because when in discussing the individual components, I have already told you, like these individual components, if this is a capacitor, then along with this capacitance, one stray resistance and inductance is also attached with this capacitor. And when you make a circuit using discrete components, okay, those parasitic components play a major role. However, when you make this integrated, make everything in form of this integrated circuit, those stray parameters or the effect of those stray parameters can be significantly reduced, right? As a result, you can make the size very small, you can reduce the cost because now you can produce in a bulk, you can reduce the power consumption because the resistance and all the other stray parameters has now reduced. Also the speed, because we will see, because the stray different capacitance is reducing, the speed will also reduce. And finally the reliability, because see here this lots of wires and tears are there, is possible for this discrete for circuit using discrete component. However, in case of integrated circuit, these are not possible. To demonstrate quickly like how integrated circuit, what is actually an integrated circuit, so you can see it here. So this is an silicon this is a semiconductor which is actually an n-type silicon, so the total thing. So here you can see three terminals for a device is shown here. One is CBU. Remember what is this device? This is we discussed, right? It is BJT, right? So it is bipolar junction transistor. So this bipolar junction transistor, this is made on this silicon material itself. Now this is a circuit symbol of bipolar junction transistor. We have not discussed it right now. We will discuss when we will be discussing the BJT. Now you see this resistance. So this is resistance, right? In discrete component you will use some resistance like this, but in IC, see, this resistance is also implemented using in semiconductor. At the same time, this resistance is also implemented in this semiconductor. So everything is on the same chip which is made up of silicon, right? And so you can see just beside this transistor only you can place this resistance, right? And remember this gap will be in the range of this micrometer or even less. Okay, so and just think about the gap between this transistor and this resistor, the separation, practical separation, and just think about this separation. That is, then it will be clear to you how. And this invention of this integrated circuits or this IC is actually have revolutionized the this electronics world. You know, that's how now everything whatever you were seeing, you know, that is actually possible because of this invention of these integrated circuits. Just to give a quick example, this is one very simple IC. This type of IC you will also be using in your laboratory courses. Okay, different laboratory courses. For example, in in Introduction to Electronics lab, this type of IC will be using. This type of IC you will see for different for the different digital circuit applications. Okay, now here one thing I would like to mention, you can see the different these pins that has come out of this IC, but if you feel that the total thing inside, if you remove this plastic cover, then inside you will be seeing the silicon chip. Actually it is not like that. You can see here this diagram. So basically these are connecting wire, mesh of this connecting wire, and the silicon chip is only here, right, only this much. So just to demonstrate that, don't think that the silicon chip is this big. Okay, silicon chip is actually pretty small, like here only this region. So I hope with this you are able to get at least the basic idea about these integrated circuits, right? So let us now see if you have any questions. Okay, let us now discuss about semiconductors. Okay. So based on the electrical conductivity, materials can be divided into 3 categories. You know that, right? At least you know two of them. The first one is obviously the conductor, right, which can conduct electricity or current. For example, all metals, isn't it? Then the other one is insulator, which cannot conduct current, right? For examples, what? Glass, plastic, all these things. Right. So conductor can conduct current, insulator cannot conduct current. And from the name semiconductor, you can understand is semiconductor, right? So its conductivity is in between them. So the third category is the semiconductor. Definitely, then we can say for semiconductors, the electrical conductivity is between an insulator and an conductor. Let me write that conductivity is between an insulator and a conductor, right? So this is the semiconductor, right, whose conductivity is between a conductor and an insulator. And few facts about semiconductor and its difference with metals, because both can conduct electricity, right? Both metals and semiconductor can conduct electricity. So suppose these are the two boxes. The first one is the metal one and the second one is the semiconductor. And these two terminal we have connected with wire for metal as well as for semiconductor, right? Now suppose for this metal we heat it, right? Then temperature obviously will rise, isn't it? Then if the temperature rise, what will happen to the conductivity between these two terminal, or the conductivity of this metal? Conductivity will what? It will reduce, right? Right. So however, in case of semiconductor, if we heat it, its temperature will also rise and its conductivity will increase, right? Means the resistance between these two terminals will decrease if you heat it. Another interesting property of semiconductor is that if you shine light on a semiconductor, then also its conductivity increases. Fine. Most importantly, the conductivity of a semiconductor can be altered or basically increased, can be changed. So change means basically you understand is increase. Change by these orders of magnitude. Think about it, orders of magnitude. Okay, that means 10 to the power 3, 10 to the power 4 times. This much variation you can do by introducing a small amount of impurity in the semiconductor. So it's introducing a small amount of impurity in it. Right. So this introduction of this impurity in a semiconductor is called, this whole process is called doping. Okay, DOPING. Yes. You understand? Fine. So let us highlight the important points. So if you increase the temperature of a semiconductor, its conductivity increases. Second one is if you shine light, then also its conductivity increases. The third one is if you add small amount of impurity, then its conductivity can be changed by orders of magnitude. Remember that, orders of magnitude. Okay, and this technique is called doping. So please remember these 3 points. So here let us also discuss some other properties or facts regarding semiconductors. So what are the charge carrier in a semiconductor? Obviously we'll say electrons, right? That you know, because that is also, the electron is also a charge carrier in case of metal too. However, in case of semiconductor, yes, also in metals, right? However, in case of semiconductor, there is a special type of carrier, and that carrier is called holes, right? Or hole. So we'll discuss more about this in the next class. How this hole is created and what is this polarity of charge of an hole, what is its mobility, all these things. You know, today almost all the electronic devices are made up of semiconductors, isn't it? So can you give some example of semiconductor? Yes, you are right. Silicon, right? Definitely silicon is a very good example of semiconductor. So silicon symbol is Si, right? What else? Germanium, right? So it is, symbol is Ge. So both silicon and germanium are group 4 materials, and these are not only the semiconductors, there are other semiconductors as well. We'll discuss more about this in our later classes. As most of the electronic devices of today's world is made up with semiconductors, and in semiconductors primarily using the silicon as a material, so let us see how these devices are actually made from silicon. So let me paste one image. Yes, this is the image. So what is the starting material for all these semiconductor devices? It is nothing but, you will be surprised to know, it is nothing but the sand. So this is actually the starting material of any electronic device. Okay, sand. So from sand we do some process, okay, and from this process we'll get pure crystalline silicon, okay, as shown here. crystalline silicon. And from this crystalline silicon we melt, form ingot and then cut and form this wafers. Remember this disc shaped thing looks like a type of earlier CD, is basically a semi wafer. The next step is the wafer processing. So that means you do different process to make different type of device. So you can see the difference between wafer and a processed wafer. That's somebody is holding it, right? And you can see this tiny in this thing. Now they are actually different blocks and different devices. Okay, so a full wafer, a silicon wafer, can contain many number of maybe suppose microprocessors or some other ICs like that. So for example, you can see this box. Inside that you can see there are like a four small symmetric four small all small boxes. Yeah, so this one of them might be one chip. Okay, then you dice this thing, you cut this thing smaller pieces and we package it. Okay, so this is actually when we package, and then at that time this device is ready for to be used in any electronic circuits. So as you have seen, starting from sand to the package device, how the process flow goes, right? So let us see if you have any question.